points on the paper. Alright. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to talk about healthcare delivery in India. And in this topic, we will mainly talk about, though this topic we deal with in the 6th semester and 7th semester, where we describe the structure of primary healthcare in India. But because that is the backbone of healthcare delivery in India for the rural poor, we always try to orient all students about what primary healthcare is and what is the structure, who are the various functionaries under the primary healthcare system, and who are the beneficiaries, how they are benefited. This basic information you should have so as to understand how healthcare is delivered to the population in India. So, when we talk about primary healthcare, in your first lesson, you must have seen, if you have the books now, that is, that there is something about Millennium Development Goals, there is something about Sustainable Development Goals. We talked about health for all. So, all these concepts they rest mainly on primary healthcare delivery in India, which is the backbone of the health delivery system, because primarily India is a rural country, with majority of the population still residing in rural areas. But when primary healthcare in India was adopted, at that time 80% of the population was rural, so it was essential healthcare which was made available to them. So we will see how primary healthcare evolved. Okay, in today's class, we'll try to see, maybe today and the next class also, we'll try to see how the primary healthcare evolved, what is the necessity for having a healthcare system which rests or addresses mainly rural health issues, why rural health is so important. So we'll try to answer all these questions to set the ground for understanding what is primary healthcare, because just by naming some of the elements, it does not do justice to the knowledge and understanding of the this huge concept which is being followed worldwide for delivery of healthcare for the poor people, for the rural people basically. So we will see over the course of next few classes what are the historical perspectives in rural development in India, and then how the healthcare delivery in rural India is, what are the elements, what is the infrastructure, what are the various manpowers, what are their roles. Recently, under the National Rural Health Mission, some public health standards were prescribed to assure that whatever healthcare is available to the rural people, though it is free of cost and largely it goes unmonitored, it is target based, but it should be of sufficient quality. So many quality guidelines have been laid under the public health standards. We shall study those. Then we shall talk about National Health Mission and what are the problems and various solutions, proposed solutions for addressing those problems under the National Health Mission for delivery of primary healthcare. Further, we can talk about what is the healthcare delivery in urban India, because now the population is facing a transition. Urban population is also growing. We have a lot of poor urban populations, migrant workers, slum population. So, how to deliver healthcare in those areas? Then we can talk about Millennium Development Goal, Sustainable Development Goal, and finally we will end our this healthcare delivery course by talking about national health planning and national health policy. Maybe we will skip this portion for now. We will take it up when you reach in your final year and you have better understanding of these things. But up to sustainable development goals, I think you will be able to understand. So we will begin with rural development or history of rural development and primary healthcare in the country. Now, what happened is, you know that rural India, it contains 70% of the population. Now, the recent report has told that this breakup of population is about 60-40. So, 60% of the population still resides in the rural area, while about 40% of the population lives in the urban areas. So, on a gross level, maybe when the rural development program was launched, so that time about 70 to 80% of the population resided in rural India. And that's why they say that if you develop rural India, you will develop India as a whole. So this was the core concept which was proposed for rural development, especially in India, because if you remember, there was an Alma-Ata conference in Alma-Ata in Russia in the year 1978. There they said health for all. Okay, and health for all could be achieved through primary health care, and that at the same time India became a signatory to Alma-Ata in 1979. So they were committed to the healthcare of the rural people. They were committed to the development of rural areas. So that is why India had its own design of delivery of healthcare through rural development, overall holistic development of rural areas, because they believed that development of rural area would lead to overall development of the country. Okay, so to begin with, the three main challenges that the country faced. Now we are going back in history. We are talking about the historical aspect. We are talking about the time in 1970s sometimes, or even before that in 1947 India became independent. So we are talking about that around that time, because primary healthcare concept only came in 1978. Before that also India was working towards rural upliftment. Several policies were in place, and they started right after India gained independence. So we are going back in history to the time when it was year 1947, 1948, and that point of time the main goals in all over the country, especially in rural areas, was to eliminate three major problems, and these problems were poverty, illiteracy, disease. Okay, so look at this picture. You can easily see how people are living in shed. Of course, this is not from India. This is taken from the internet somewhere. But yes, the situation in rural areas, in outskirts, was not much different. People used to live in temporary shelters, in huts, and these were the actual living conditions of the people then. Okay, then illiteracy was the second main problem, because there were no schools, there were no avenues for education of the poor children. So mostly people remained illiterate, children remained illiterate, because school dropout rate was high. First, enrollment was very low, and even if they were enrolled, there was a lot of gender bias: who will read and who will not read. So girl students, historically did not attend school very often. They just did the household chores and got married off early. So there was very little literacy, especially among the women folk. Okay, so then if you look at the status of disease, even till 2001, if you look at it, which is in the present decade, in the past 2 decades, so you see that the common causes of mortality were mainly bronchitis, asthma, okay, lung diseases, prematurity, heart attack, pneumonia. So many of these are tuberculosis, pneumonia. So these are all infectious diseases. Okay, asthma, though it is not infectious, but it is a result of pollution and poor living conditions. So this was the ranking. If you look at females, then bronchitis, asthma was the number one cause of mortality. Prematurity was second. Heart attacks were third. Pneumonia, cancers, tuberculosis were fourth, fifth, sixth, respectively. And somewhere in the 10th position, they had gastroenteritis and vehicular accidents. And there was no data which was available for suicides in both the genders. Okay, then if you look at male, it was the distribution was slightly different than the females. So here again, bronchitis, asthma, or conditions of the lung were the number one cause of mortality, but heart attack was second, then tuberculosis was third. So we had a lot of tuberculosis even till the year 2000 in the current generation. So this was the status of disease. What I'm showing you here is a picture of leprosy, a very classical case of leprosy where there has been limb loss, the orofacial structure has been affected, there is scoliosis, that is loss of eyebrows, eyelashes, okay, and some damage to the eye also appears here, right? So this was a very big problem, leprosy. Now it is well under control. You do not see people like this, but when I was younger, I saw a lot of people, beggars on the street, and very poor people who have been uh, uh, who are not accepted by the society as a result of their disease. So they are left nowhere. They are not offered jobs. They are not in a condition to do the jobs. So they are just left on the streets. Families abandon them. The societies abandon them, and they live in absolute poverty, I would say. So this was the condition of disease. This one, leprosy, was very prevalent in that area, time of the year. Actually, I can take you back to one of the stories of Gandhi ji. If you remember Gandhi ji, who is the father of the nation, who you must have seen some pictures of him attending to a leprosy patient. His name was Parchure. Okay, so when he was in Maharashtra in his Sevagram ashram, that time he set up a separate, let's say, abode or hut for this person suffering from leprosy, and he personally attended him, and the person also got better after receiving years of care and treatment from, of course, the lost limbs and lost digits, they could not be brought back. That is something which is not reversible, but other things, if you look at the general status, further damage, so he survived well, and he lived a other morbidity free life, you can say, under the care of Gandhi ji. So he set an example that with proper care and nutrition and everything, you could halt the progress of disease. So this is what he was trying to prove to the world. Second thing is, with proper precautions, it is not a communicable disease. So leprosy is very communicable, but Gandhiji, though staying in such close proximity to the leprosy patient and attending to his wounds himself, he never got leprosy himself. So that is, if you take proper precautions, then the disease may not be transmitted from person to person. So these are some principles which were proven through this story of Gandhiji. So please look up the story of Gandhiji and how he cared for Parchure. Even now, if you go to Sevagram Ashram, you will see the hut. It's named Parchure Kuti. Kuti means a hut. So after his name, you will see that it's still there, and what are the things which were there with which he used to care for the patient. So these are some diseases. Now, if you look at poverty, the problem of poverty, how it breeds all the other diseases is a cyclical process, because you start off with poverty, or you start with any of the thing. You start off with disease, or you start off with illiteracy. Ultimately, somewhere you will fall in this cycle. Okay, and all three would happen together, because if you start with poverty, if you are born poor, you don't attend school. I don't mean you, but the person who is born poor, there are low chances that he will achieve, he will receive good education, so he will remain an illiterate. Illiteracy breeds lack of awareness about various disease conditions, about various health facilities or avenues. Then there is, when the person is not properly aware, then he would have um, lack of hygiene. He would not value these things so much. That is why hygiene, illiteracy, poverty, they go hand in hand. Okay, so it is always a result of this cyclical process. Lack of hygiene breeds so many diseases. Diseases, they lead to disability. When a person is disabled, they lose jobs, and then they sit at home, they become burdens. They become dependents rather than burdens. I will call them dependents on the other earning members of the family. So there is lack of manpower at work. Okay, so from the work front also, there is lack of manpower in various works. So what happens is there is overall, if there is lack of manpower and there are a lot of dependents in a certain community, there is a lack of progress in that community. Now when there is lack of progress, that means there is economic deprivation. Now, when economic deprivation sets in, like again I will give you the example of COVID. People were sitting at home, they were not going to work. Ultimately factories kicked out most of the workers. It led to lack of manpower, it led to progress, and it led to economic deprivation. You have seen all this with your own eyes, how the country headed towards poverty during the lockdown period, and now they are saying that it will take years to recover from these damages or losses which have happened. So this economic deprivation leads to further unemployment, because factories and institutions and all these facilities for employment, they shut down. Okay, and when there is no employment, then there is further poverty, further illiteracy, further lack of awareness. So you may be anywhere in this cycle. You may be diseased. Okay, you may find a person who is diseased and ultimately he is disabled as a result of disease, and he will go through the same cycle, okay, of economic deprivation, unemployment, poverty, illiteracy. So this is a cyclical process, and all these three problems, though they are the core problems which have been identified separately, they actually are the parts of the cycle. So whatever the problem is, ultimately it's a cogwheel in this wheel. Okay, so we'll again look at the history from here. So the first step for rural development was taken in 1952. I told you that was the time when India gained independence in 1947, and the first 5-year plan, you must have heard about 5-year plans. You can ask your parents, they definitely must have lived through 5-year plans. So 5-year plans were plans which were made by the center. That time we had the planning commission, and their role was to study what is happening in the country, what are the needs of the country, and accordingly they made plans for the next 5 years. So in 1952, the first 5-year plan was implemented, and programs were developed for the welfare of the rural population. So community development program was one such program, okay, CDP. And the second important program which was launched during the first 5-year plan was integrated rural development program. And a lot of the activities of primary health care that we see today were initiated under the integrated rural development program. So that is why this program is very important, though you will not read about integrated rural development program in your books, but I will orient you to what were the key features in rural development program, which later on were merged or later on were borrowed into the primary healthcare program, so as to strengthen it further for the and make it reasonable for or rational for delivery of healthcare system in rural areas. So let's look at the community development program, because this was first such program to be launched for the development, wholesome development or holistic development of the rural community. So by definition, it was a process designed to create conditions of economic and social progress for the whole community with its active participation and fullest possible reliance on its initiative. So these are some of the key words in this definition. Community development program, it rested on conditions of economic and social progress. That is one. And the idea of community participation, see, it talks about whole community with its active participation. So community has to participate in its own economic as well as social progress, and fullest possible reliance upon its initiative. So they have to rely on this program for the further development also. So you see, these are the two key words here: economic progress as well as social progress and active participation. So we shall see what these are. Now, according to United Nations, they also tried to define community development. So they said that it's a process by which the efforts of the people themselves are united with those of the government authorities to improve the economic, social and cultural conditions of the community to integrate those communities with the life of the nation and to enable them to contribute fully to the national progress. So you see, this definition and the previous definition are not very different from each other. This is a much simpler one where you talk about economic and social progress with active participation, whereas in the United Nations definition also you are talking about community participation, where you are saying united efforts to improve, integrate, and contribute to the national progress, economic, social, cultural conditions. Okay, so these are not very different from each other. This is more elaborated definition of what they try to mean by community development. Okay, so the community development program was launched on 2nd October 1952. So the importance of 2nd October, you know, it is the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi again. So to earmark the birth of Mahatma Gandhi, the program was launched on that day, and it's a program of the people, for the people, by the people. So we use this definition of the people, for the people, by the people for which other national attribute? It is democracy, okay, where we say that the constitution is of the people, for the people, and by the people. So similarly, please remember this, that this is a democratic country, and even for healthcare they use the same definition. Let it be democratic. Let people participate in their own health. Okay, this is health of the people, this is health for the people, and this is various health activities by the people. So the aim of the overall community development program was to eliminate these three problems which we had identified in the very first slide: poverty, disease, illiteracy. And you also saw that they run in a cycle, and how eliminating all these three would severely impact the cyclical progress of any of these conditions. So how it was planned? It was launched through rural areas. Okay, in every rural area there are development blocks. Okay, so 100 such villages form one development block, and it is estimated that 100 villages will have about 1 lakh population. So this is the situation in 1952, what I am telling. Today there is more population in 100 villages. So so in rural areas, there are development blocks which are comprised of 100 villages or about 1 lakh population, and one development officer for one block was appointed. So one development officer was supposed to look after 100 villages having about 1 lakh population, and that is how he would look into the various activities for rural upliftment, and he would report to his higher authorities about what is happening in his development block. Okay, so what are the activities that he was supposed to look at? First was communications. Okay, communication, which could be regarding various social activities, it could be about various economic activities, it could be about welfare of the farmers. Okay, so but mainly in communications they also integrated some sections on how to keep yourselves healthy. Okay, so this was one of the very important activity of the development officer. Then there was talks on agriculture, because it was a rural community. So basically they had to talk a lot about how to improve agriculture, how to improve production, provision of good quality seeds, providing pesticides, providing support, irrigation support, then how to sell off their products in the market with in fair price. So many things were introduced at that point of time for overall development of the farmers, because again, to begin with, farmers reside in rural areas, which comprises about 70 to 80% of the population in India. Okay, so then they also talked about education, because you saw education also, illiteracy or poor education also was a very important problem which was identified initially. So how to provide education? They set up schools. They also set up night schools at that point of time, and it was called Praud Shiksha. Praud Shiksha was adult education through night schools. So if you are a fan of old movies, if you watch some old movies with your family together, then you will see that the protagonist or the hero in the movie would usually be doing his work in the day, and at night he would be attending a night school. Okay, so So the stress on education was there, stress on agriculture was there, stress on communications were there. Other things which were important, but they were not given due importance, was health, because you saw there were various conditions, but imparting general health education, imparting education about sanitation and personal hygiene was something which the development officer could do. But when it came to real controlling of the health conditions or various disease conditions like tuberculosis, like leprosy, then development officer obviously had to liaise with the health authorities in his area, like the health officer or somebody, and they were overall in charge for the health activities in the development block. Okay, then they talked about sanitation, and in the initial times, there is mention of sanitation inspectors who would go around in the community, and then they would look after the sanitation in that whole area, so that diseases which are related to water logging or garbage disposal, like typhoid, cholera, they could be contained. And if you know, typhoid, cholera, and eye diseases like trachoma were very, very prevalent in the era that we are talking about. So nowadays we don't see much of those diseases because we have a proper method of disposal of waste, both solid and liquid, and it is well taken care of, it is well controlled. But in the initial stages, in the initial times, they were major public health problems. So development officer was also supposed to look into what are the various control measures that were being implemented for control of these problems. Okay, then he also would look at the housing, he would look at the social welfare, and he would also look at other aspects like training in vocational arts, rural arts and crafts. Okay, so that the families, they become self sufficient, there is promotion of rural arts and crafts, and they become income generating activities, because you saw that uh, rural development, in the definition you saw that it revolved around economic progress, economic as well as social progress. So all these things were very economically productive right from the early years after independence. Indian handicrafts were very popular then and even now. So that's why they offered training to women folk, to men folk in various arts and crafts and industries, local industries. So in the first stage, you need not remember this, but some financial support was also provided by the government in the stage one. About 12 lakhs of financial support for the first 5 years was provided, and in stage two, for the next 5 years, about 5 lakh rupees was provided, and then onwards it was provided by the state government. So this much money was earmarked for development of uh, rural development. And nowadays we don't talk about this budget in lakhs, we talk about in crores. So what were the results of having this program? So they had dedicated manpower, they had dedicated this one, your financial support and everything. So it did make some contribution. Okay, it made its own contribution in the form of having a integrated program that targets illiteracy, that targets poverty, and that targets diseases and overall health of the population together. But there were some shortfalls also. So it did not succeed in bringing about an all-round development in the rural areas as it was envisaged when the program was first designed. Okay, so ultimately it did not succeed in eliminating rural poverty and unemployment, the core goals with which it was formulated. So it did result in some advances, but not total elimination of poverty and unemployment. So why did this happen? So what we learned from this program was that people were not responding in keeping their efforts. Okay, the whole program rested on community participation, whereas when the program was launched, People mostly felt that it is a government program. Government should come and do something for them. This is still, unfortunately, the state of affairs now. People always believe that somebody will come from somewhere with a magic wand and suddenly the problems will disappear. It does not happen. So they do not participate in their own health. They do not participate in their own progress, but expect somebody else to come and do it. So that is what happened in the forefront. And then the hope that people would unite their efforts to those of the government to build the village community on a pattern in which disparities in income and wealth disappear. Okay, it was not realized. What we mean by this sentence is that the government hoped that when they launched a program and invited people to participate in that program, they would forget their differences of rich and poor, and so all the other socio-cultural problems like casteism, like men, women, and they will unite and they will work together for all their problems. But that did not happen. Those problems remained. So clearly, these problems were not addressed in the design stage itself. So everybody learned their lesson that there are further parameters which should be incorporated into development of a successful program. And when we see primary healthcare later, we will see that all these aspects about differences in access, differences in education, differences in wealth and income, they are taken care of when we talk about primary healthcare delivery. So in fact, the benefits of the program did not reach the weaker sections of the community through for whom the program was targeted or designed in the first place. So the community development program, it made its own contribution. There were failures, there were lessons to be learned from the failure of this program, and this is one of the first program which was designed for the overall development of the rural communities in the initial years of um, independence. So then came the integrated rural development program. I think today we will stop only at the community development program, and next time I will talk about the integrated rural development program, which came in 1978 at the same time around the Alberta conference. And the core objective of this program was to attack poverty. With the program came with the aims to eliminate rural poverty altogether and improve the quality of life of the rural people. So now, instead of specifically saying that we want to address poverty, we want to address illiteracy, we want to address poor health, they had stressed mainly on poverty as a source for all the other problems. And they said that they would eliminate rural poverty and improve the quality of life, which would be a holistic development in terms of economic and social advancement in the lives of the people. So we will talk about this integrated rural development program in the next class, and we will then link because this was also launched in 1978. Alberta conference also was held in 1978. Primary healthcare also came in 1978. Health for all also came in 1978. So many important things happened. There was a turnover or game changer in the area of health that happened in the year 1978. And then we will talk about how they revolved around each other and how the important components were borrowed from the various programs and integrated into one model of primary healthcare that we see today. So I will stop here and see you in the next class where we talk more about rural development. Thank you and have a very nice day.